All right, so in this video, we're going to look at a couple different things. One is what is going on with Trump talking about bringing in the military, right, into cities to try to get protests under control. So what is all that about? And then we're going to take a look at one of his speeches and actually listen to what he's saying and realize how much he's missing it here, how much he just doesn't get what's going on. And it wasn't even a speech. You listen to the speech. There's no way he wrote the speech, but you listen to it and you go, you just don't get it. You don't get what the protesters are talking about. So first of all, Trump keeps threatening that he's going to invoke the Insurrection Act. So that's where you can actually use the military in the United States. So you're not really supposed to do this in general. The military is supposed to be about protecting us from other countries, or when we go into other countries and they need to be protected from us. Like that's what our military is usually about, is usually like foreign stuff. Right? Foreign issues that need to be dealt with. You're not really supposed to use the military on your own people because that brings up some very serious issues about what kind of country we actually are when the military is being used on its own citizens. However, there is precedent for this. So this Insurrection Act is basically something that can be invoked when there's some kind of an uprising, and that it would appear that that term uprising is pretty loose. So you can use it in a lot of things. In fact, it was expanded to include things like terrorist attacks and a number of different things. This is actually what was used in the LA riots in the 90s. Was it 92? So that's what happened, right? The Insurrection Act was invoked, the military was brought in, and it settled things down. So it's not like this has not been used before. When it was used in the 90s, the good thing was it went away. It didn't become a stronger military presence. Like that's kind of the fear, right? Is Trump is not really the one that you want using the military on its own people, because many of us have absolutely no trust that he's going to make the right decisions, right? We'll hear him in a little bit talk about rule of law. But, I mean, if you followed Trump closely at all, there's nothing about the man that's rule of law. And we can even see, you know, his secondhand man that helps him fight rule of law, William Barr right there. The two of those together, no concern about rule of law. We even see the National Security Advisor back there, who I did a video on the other day, talking about how there is no systemic racism in police departments in the United States. So really, this whole crew of people we see walking right here, right? We could just go through one by one and pick out all the clueless individuals here, right? But that's not what I want this whole video to be about. But it gives you an idea of where we're going, why people don't want Trump bringing the military in on U.S. citizens, right? This is a bit of an issue. So okay, so that's where we're going. If we're questioning what is this where Trump's talking about bringing the military? Yeah, there are actual steps where this could be done, and he could, I think, legally get away with it. It's not like he's going to get shot down by, you know, court saying you can't do this. I think he could make it work, especially with William Barr pulling the strings, because we've done it before. All right, let's take a look at his speech here. So when we're watching this speech here, let's keep in mind, it is clearly obvious that Trump didn't write this speech, right? Go back and look at any time where he's just talking. This is not how Trump talks. And that's fine. I'm not saying that it's wrong to have speech writers, but let's keep in mind, Trump did not write this speech, right? Obama had speech writers. Lots of people had speech writers. Totally normal for a president to have speech writers. But it sounds very presidential. It sounds professional. It sounds like someone who is actually trying to make an attempt at sounding presidential, right? So it's the most presidential I've ever heard him sound. The problem is, I feel like he's making the exact opposite case that he needs to be making. All these things that he talks about are exactly what the protesters are trying to explain to him. It's what they're trying to explain to him. So if you listen to all of his words that he says here, except coming from a protester, like the protester could have written this and then he just took the speech and read it, but made it about the protesters, because what the protesters are trying to do is be heard so that they, you know, innocent people, innocent civilians, and innocent citizens are not being killed. Okay, so let's listen to the speech here.
Therefore, the following measures are going into effect immediately. First, we are ending the riots and lawlessness that has spread throughout our country. We will end it now. Today, I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers, that we dominate the streets. Mayors.
Okay, so that's what he's coming with. Again, threats and overpowering dominance. Why don't you just listen? Listen to what people are saying, because the main message we're hearing from protesters is stop murdering us. Stop murdering us. So when the main message coming through is stop murdering us, and your response is we are going to send in the military and we are going to smash all this down, all that's going to do is escalate things. Now, and I'm not saying they shouldn't send in, the government has a responsibility to try to get riots under control. Yes, but you could come at it from a different direction instead of threats and say, you know what? We see there's a problem. We see there's an issue, and we're going to do meaningful change here, right? Listen to what they have to say.
Mayors and governors must establish an overwhelming law enforcement presence until the violence has been quelled. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them. I am also taking swift and decisive action to protect our great capital, Washington, D.C. What happened in this city last night was a total disgrace. As we speak, I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, and law enforcement officers to stop the rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and the wanton destruction of property. We are putting everybody on warning. Our 7 o'clock curfew will be strictly enforced. Those who threaten innocent life and property will be arrested, detained, and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I want the organizers of this terror to be on notice that you will face severe criminal penalties and lengthy sentences in jail. This includes Antifa and others who are leading instigators of this violence. One law and order, and that is what it is. One law. We have one beautiful law.
I'll admit I'm a little lost here. It seems to me like we have lots of laws. I'm not sure what the one law is he's referring to. That sounds kind of authoritarian. Like one law, his law, Trump law. Otherwise, I don't know if that's what he's trying to make, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't get the point. I don't get where he's going with this.
America is founded upon the rule of law. It is the foundation of our prosperity, our freedom, and our very way of life. But where there is no law, there is no opportunity. Where there is no justice, there is no liberty. Where there is no safety, there is no future.
Right, and that's basically what the protesters are trying to say. Like right there. Like what he just said is what the protesters are trying to say to the government, which is if we don't have these things, we cannot be prosperous. Let's listen to that again.
We must never, there's no opportunity of life. It is the foundation of our prosperity, our freedom, and our very way of life. But where there is no law, there is no opportunity.
So isn't that what the protesters are trying to say? Where there is no law, there is no opportunity? Yeah, right. The cops don't have to follow the law. They get to murder black people in the streets. So where's the opportunity for that segment of the population?
Where there is no justice, there is no liberty.
Where there is no justice, there is no liberty. This is what the protesters are protesting for. This is the message they are trying to get out and say, yeah, this is what we need. So he's sitting here telling the protesters this when that's what they're trying to say to him, but he can't get a hold of it in the point of view that is anything outside of his own point of view.
Where there is no safety, there is no future.
I mean, come on. Like, it's just escalating. That's what they're trying to say. Where there is no safety, there is no future. That is the problem. There are people who don't feel safe because people like them are being murdered in the streets by our government police force, and they don't feel like they have a future because of it. That's the problem. That's what you need to be hearing and saying, oh, I hear what you're saying, and here's what we're going to do about it. Here's how we're going to fix things. Right? That should not be the thing he's telling people. That should be what he's hearing and saying, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. There's no, if you're not safe, how do you have a future? Let's work on that. Let's fix it.
We must never give in to anger or hatred. If malice or violence reigns, then none of us is free. I take these actions today.
So you never give in to anger or hatred. So first of all, that's interesting coming from Trump. But secondly, if you're seeing people like you being murdered in the streets by government agents, which is what the police is, right? The police is government. It's the enforcement arm of the government. You see people like that murdering people like you in the streets, you're not going to think that the system works for you. That's what we have to fix, is have a system that works for people, and then they won't be in the streets protesting because they won't have a reason to, because they can live productive lives in a country that values them.
With firm resolve and with a true and passionate love for our country, by far our greatest days lie ahead. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to pay my respects to a very, very special place. Thank you very much.
So it's clearly just tone deaf on the issue, right? It's the same thing, like not coming out, hearing someone's point of view. This could have gone very differently. Instead of coming out, which were essentially threats. Now, they were well-written threats. Again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't try to get the riots under control, because I don't condone violence against people. Burning down buildings is generally not a good thing. But if you sprinkled in some, hey, we hear what you're saying, the protests, if people doing the protests thought that there was meaningful change coming, they wouldn't be out in the middle of a pandemic risking their lives to protest. I mean, every protester out there is risking their lives in a way that they never have before, because you could go out, protest, and then come home with a virus that will then kill you or spread to your family. People are out there because they feel like they don't have a lot of choice. And what we're getting from the administration, what we just saw from Trump, totally clueless about what people are trying to say, right? His national security advisor the other day telling that the police departments in the United States do not have a systemic racism problem, right? Again, there's great cops out there, but there's also a systemic problem with the way police forces are organized and run that leads to this kind of behavior. And until you listen and say, you know what, maybe there's some changes we can make so that we don't see people being murdered in the streets by the government, this is exactly what you're going to get. And by coming back and just saying we're going to smash you with force, right, I don't think is the right approach here. It's truly a tone-deaf approach. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can get all the new videos as they become available, and we'll see you in the future.